Mr. Rexhap Meidani, former President of Albania, thank you so much for joining us here at ICD. It is an honor to have you here, and you've had a wonderful lecture previously today. And now I would like to ask you some more questions on some very important issues.
Thank you. You're welcome.
In the year 2000, you became the first Albanian head of state to visit the Kosovo region, which is heavily populated by ethnic Albanian. During this visit, you spoke against the desirability of creating a greater Albania that would include ethnic Albanians in neighboring countries and instead stressed the need for a closer regional and European integration. Do you believe that Russia is trying to create a greater Russia after its annexation of the eastern Ukraine? And if so, what would be the best way in persuading them against taking further action in annexating further territory containing Russian minorities?
Well, linked to Kosovo, I can say that, well, there I was a professor at the University of Pristina before becoming president, and also before closing the borders of Albania and the former Yugoslavia. So for me it was the first visit as a president, but was not my first visit in Kosovo. It was, well, I've been many times there, and I've had many friends. And my message there was this one: how to build a new multicultural society, and how to build the normal cooperation between different groups, coexistence between religious groups or different ethnic groups. And in Albania, we have realized this coexistence between religious and ethnic groups. And also Pope, during the last visit in Albania, has mentioned this fact that we have this coexistence between religious groups in Albania, and this is as a model for other countries. Going back now to Russia. Well, I'm working with different countries, and one of these countries is, for example, Moldova. One of the regions of Moldova, Transnistria, is nearly, well, split from the central government or central authority. They have their government, the parliament, and it's under the Russian influence. And maybe they will continue in this step. But what we see the last months with the annexation of Crimea and this conflicts in Ukraine, in eastern Ukraine, well, this is quite a dangerous game of Russia, particularly of the President Putin. So between different conflicts that we have in our world, many of these conflicts are in the territory of the former Soviet Union. So we have this conflict of Transnistria. We have another conflict which is Nagorno-Karabakh. We have the conflict of 2008 between Ossetia and Georgia, between Abkhazia and Georgia. And all these conflicts are produced in this territory of Soviet Union. But it doesn't mean that to be back to this kind of empire, of Soviet empire, we have to play with the dignity of people, with this aspiration of freedom and of human rights. And for that, I believe we need a stronger reaction from Western countries, including European Union and United Nations, United States. On the other side, what I can say, well, Russia is one of the members, or permanent members of Security Council. This means that if any other member of Security Council, permanent member, will do or behave in the same way, it can create problems in the world. So it means that something is wrong also in this legislation of United Nations. So we have to make some amendments in the Charter of United Nations and also regarding the Security Council, not to permit also the strong countries, great powers, being permanent members or not of the Security Council, to do what they like. In the case of annexation of Crimea, well, Russia has done what it liked to do, and the reaction of Eastern countries have been a weak one.
Well, back to the Balkan context, a recent football match played between the Serbian and Albanian football teams had to be abandoned. What more can the Serbian and Albanian governments do to try and encourage better relations between the two states?
Well, it was, well, for me it was something which is pumped, was not quite a serious event, and well, it was pumped by politics, it was pumped by media, and well, it's created a problem that it didn't exist. So there was a problem between Serbia and Kosovo, but there was no problem between Albania and Serbia. And what was happening there was pumped in a wrong direction, and the politicians of Belgrade, they played with this fact. It was some mistakes done by the president of Serbia, while also the prime minister of Serbia has reacted in a wrong way, but unfortunately now many of these things have been clarified, and well, the Albanian prime minister will pay a visit to Belgrade on the 12th or 13th November, so yeah, after 2-3 days.
As I was aware of that, since it's the first visit since 1946, do you think this is a first step in the right direction in terms of improving relations?
Well, again, it's something which is, I can say it's a game of politics, because in different cases we have had contacts. For example, I met in many international meetings the Kostunica, who has been at the time the president. It was after the Kosovo conflict, and we met each other in Skopje. It was well, a meeting for regional cooperation, and it was under the auspice of United Nations, and also the representatives of United States and Europe have been there. So this was, well, a normal contact. We have had different contacts. But now also Albanian policy is playing with this visit. It's not, well, something which will be considered like something special. I consider this a visit which is a normal visit. We have to continue this kind of contacts, particularly to increase the economic contacts in the framework of regional integration, and to prepare through this regional integration for the European accession. On the other side, well, we've had some days ago, we've had a meeting, a regional meeting in Albania, and I have had a speech there, and what I said was, well, can we have a process of accession to European Union similar to that of 2004, when we have had a kind of big bang of 10 countries. 10 states have been integrated, accessed in the European Union at the time. And it was 2007 and 2008 was Bulgaria and Romania, and 2013 was Croatia. Now we have 7 countries in the Western Balkans. All these countries, in my view, will be quite positive to be integrated in the same, at the same time, in the same process, because in this way they can help each other, but they can't create barriers to each other through this veto in Europe.
How long time do you think that we have to wait till this will gonna happen?
Well, this is linked also to the economic development, to economic growth. Still, we have problems, economic problems in our region, and well, when I made the calculations, it was nearly, well, 12 years ago, 13 years ago, when I make the calculations. Well, it was, for us, it was, well, based on my calculations, was something like 2020. But if there is a political will, we can be members of European Union a little earlier.
I hope so too. But back to the Albanian-Serbian relations, do you think that cultural diplomacy can be an effective tool in easing the tensions between these two states in the context of this challenge?
Well, we have had contacts and we have cooperated. I don't believe that there is a real conflict between Serbia and Albania, like states. Regarding the populations, well, of course, we have problems because we have also our relatives in Kosovo or in other part of Yugoslavia, because they've been treated not in a dignified way. Well, we have had these problems, but this is it's not a conflict between two states, but it's a kind of mistrust between two communities, Serb community and Albanian community. And through this cultural diplomacy, we can make well, positive steps. And I believe something is done, and something has to be done more in our region. Particularly the civil society is working quite well. It's in the front of this kind of regional cooperation.
Yeah. Now, during your time as president, you played a key role in the adoption and implementation of the Stability Pact for Southeastern Europe. In this pact, Albania received large amounts of money for the rehabilitation of roads, railways, harbours, power and water lines. Even though major European economies are suffering from the economic crisis, do you believe they are doing enough in the current circumstances to ensure the stability of some of the poorer economic states?
Well, regarding the Stability Pact, of course, the acceptation was quite high. So the most part of the contribution was to soft infrastructure. So a lot of debate, reforms regarding the hard infrastructure, roads or railways. Well, the contribution was limited, not what was mentioned. But a lot of things have been done regarding the reforms and also increasing the contact. In this kind of perspective, I can consider the Pact of Stability like a mechanism of cultural diplomacy, but in a political level. A lot of contacts have been organized under the scheme or framework of the Pact of Stability. And some months ago, in 28th of August, there was a meeting here in Berlin with Chancellor Merkel and the leaders of Western Balkans how to cooperate and to work together for realizing a kind of new economic growth through this cooperation. So to have a kind of cohesion in the level of a region to be prepared after for the integration to European Union. And in this kind of forum, was also Barroso was at the time the president of the Commission. He has promised to the countries of Western Balkans, well, a kind of support, economic support of nearly 10 billion euros, which is a big sum. And important is that, well, this support, financial support, to be realized for common projects, not for individual projects. How to work together, to do together things, and how to increase the communication in all fields, and including the economic one. And I believe there is a chance for all countries of Western Balkans to do something together.
I see. Now, a question related to your speech. How do you comment the recent visit of Pope Francis in Albania, the first country visited by him in Southeastern Europe?
Well, it was because Albania was an isolated country, maybe the most isolated country in the communist bloc. And another element was that, the religious practices was not permitted for decades in Albania. So it was a feeling of suffer in Albania on one side. And the other one is that actually the coexistence, as I mentioned, between religions in Albania and also coexistence between ethnic groups in Albania, it's a model for other countries. And this kind of model was emphasized by the Pope, and well, this was a real service to Albanians, but it's also a service to different communities and what is happening today in the world.
Well, I'm very glad to hear that positive opinion. Mr. Rexhap Meidani, thank you so much for taking your time to be here with us at ICD, and we look forward to have you here again.
Welcome.
Thank you so much.